Welcome to the Scandinavian MIND podcast, our weekly show about how technology is changing the creative industries. Today on the program, Stockholm Design Week Thought Leaders. We report from Scandinavia's largest design event that has taken place this week, both at the trade show of Stockholm Furniture Fair, as well as the many events and showrooms around town. In this episode, we'll hear from designer and sustainability expert Emma Olbers, Adam Scheuring, CEO of the carbon software company VariableJacob Wallér, owner of Jordens ArkitekterSean, and the founders of Interesting Times Gang, Johan Barrett, head of innovation, and Alexander Westerlund, head of design. We will talk about how to develop low-carbon products, why hemp is the new linen, and what biophilic actually means and why it's important. My name is Konrad Olsson, editor-in-chief and founder of Scandinavian MIND, and I'm here with the man on the ground, my colleague Johan Magnusson. Johan, how are you?
Yeah, even more exhausted than when we spoke a week ago.
It's getting old, this theme of us traveling around the design and fashion week, but that's life, huh?
Yeah, it's the same procedure every year.
But at least we're back in our hometown recording this little pre-talk from our studio in our headquarters. But we'll hear from what we call thought leaders in the industry, really been trying to capture some of the most interesting people around there. Actually, it's all you. I haven't been doing anything. I've been here working on the next steps of Scandinavian MIND. I had to actually opt out of Design Week pretty much full stop this week, but I'm so happy you've been out and about doing this. Let's start with talking a little bit about the program and the furniture fair. I see a lot of beautiful things happening in the feeds and in the invites. I also hear talks about a very diminished show. What are your impressions from Stockholm Furniture Fair?
Yeah, it's a lot smaller than, significantly smaller than previous years,
right.
And similar to last year, but then they were a bit more taken by surprise. So this time they had at least a chance to fill out the spaces, the empty spaces with other activities, lounge areas and stuff. So it felt more adjusted to the current situation.
Right. Well, someone told me it's about a half of exhibitors from last year. It's only 2 of the 3 halls that are containing these exhibitions. What are some of the highlights, just visually, some of the things you've seen that's interesting?
Yeah, so while the actual fair is a bit smaller than usual, it's been way more inspiring. And finally, we've seen a great range of innovation, huge spaces for young emerging studios. So when the biggest brands have opted out of being present, and even arranging its own activities just to compete with, a year ago or so, we had the Danish brands actively moving out, joining forces, moving out of Stockholm, and instead putting all their efforts into 3 days of design as like a statement.
Which is the Copenhagen event, happens later this spring in May.
Exactly, and
actually June this year, I think.
Yeah, and now we've seen major players deciding not to show, but then there's room for, as I mentioned, a lot more innovation, a lot more craft and new materials and exciting exhibitions. So it felt like the best furniture fair by far so far, and it's much thanks to the new organization, or now not so new, but they at the opening press breakfast they called this like a test bed for design, and I completely agree. And of course the question remains, will the actual fair be able to survive when it's significantly smaller, and they're obviously not getting the same amount of incomes from the major exhibitors, but that's not for us to we'll see.
Well, I guess it's kind of an ongoing observation from us to kind of take the temperature on the health of these trade shows. But, we have a Nordic perspective. I also hear murmurs about, some brands leaving Stockholm for the upcoming Habitare Pro, which is a new kind of business-to-business trade show happening in Helsinki later this year. Obviously, we have 3 days of design, as you mentioned. There's something happening, and I was shocked to hear about this separate event that was happening at the south of Sweden at the same time. Felt like there's some kind of turf war stuff going on. Also read a very interesting kind of almost like an op-ed on LinkedIn by the I would say influential designer Alexander Westerlund, talking about really calling out the companies that are actively boycotting the show. It's not good for the Swedish industry. We have to come together, all that sort of things.
It's so much prestige, and it feels like it's the same procedure all over again with the fashion industry in Sweden not working together, and they haven't been able to work together in many years. And
Right.
now we see similar development in design.
Yeah.
And it's of course really bad development. And while Sweden is a lot of different wills, then Denmark, they all come together towards one goal, and that is to just keep seeing 3 days of design growing year by year.
Right. Well, they're a disruptor as well, so it's always easy to be a disruptor and have a sense of unity around that. I guess it doesn't help that the city of Stockholm, which took ownership of the Stockholm Design Week and the Stockholm Furniture Fair, announced a few months ago that we're going to demolish the entire fairgrounds. I think it's 2029 or something like. So it's a few years in the future, but basically saying we're giving up on this. So there is an issue with this place not being filled up. I would say there's something around management that's not quite right, and the city should not run a trade show operation to begin with. So we'll see what happens. Maybe they move it out to Kista, which is another fairgrounds in the north of the central city. Who knows? Maybe they'll end up in Gothenburg in Svenska Mässan, where they obviously a very strong trade show city there.
Or they'll all end up in Copenhagen.
All right, so let's get into some of the interviews you've been doing around town and at the fairgrounds, beginning with our friend, I would say, Emma Olbers. I really like Emma. I think she's definitely a thought leader in the industry. We've had her on this podcast several times, on stage, various panels. She's kind of become the go-to person for, I wouldn't say sustainability activism, but definitely knowledge sharing. She's often seen at the Fridays for Future demonstrations on her Instagram. So she's definitely, her heart is burning for this issue. What did Emma had to say this year?
Yeah, so we met this morning because she's the winner of a Polestar Sustainability Award at El Decoration Design Award. So yeah, and quite the right choice, quite the only choice, if you may say. And the day before yesterday, when I went to the furniture fair, she also arranged special sustainability tours, and she told me that she had expected like 2 or 3 people showing up. We were more than 40. And spent an hour, and she highlighted selected exhibitors based on her own sustainability agenda, so to say. And it's about reuse of material, extending the life cycle of a material, and recycling and such. So a few different criteria, and the stops that we went to represent the different parts of the sustainability program.
All right, let's hear it. Here's Emma Olbers, Stockholm-based designer.
The new Stockholm Furniture Fair, or this year's Stockholm Furniture Fair, I actually feel it's just like Hanna Nova said at the press breakfast. It's a test bed, and you can really feel a feeling of rethinking. A lot of new stands, and a lot of company has actually thought about what will happen with the stands afterwards, and they have tried to minimize, then they don't do floors anymore. So I think that's really positive. And they have also thought about low carbon materials in their stands. And with my guided tour, when I go around, I could find a lot of good examples.
Also at the fair, you present a product for Vestre, for which you now have won L Decoration Design Award. What can you say about it?
The first that comes to mind is that I think the material is very important, and materials usually stands for like at least 50% of furniture's emissions, total emissions. And this material, the fossil-free steel from SSAB, is really a game changer. The global emission for steel is like 7 to 8% total of the global emissions. So imagine if that could go down with 80%, 80-90%.
I saw a lot of material focus, and we've seen a lot of linen, and now a lot of hemp, right?
Yes.
Or what other materials are you curious of?
It is just like you say, these hemp and linen and what I would call as a group fast-growing grasses. They are all low carbon. And I think we will see more and more of that. They are both low carbon and fast growing, and they are also combining a lot of carbon when they grow.
Do you agree with me when I say that it's the young and emerging designers? Of course, they're paving the way here, while the bigger companies, they're a bit behind, they're a bit slower, but they should be the ones leading the way, right? Because they can make a real change.
Yeah, Wester that I work with, they are an older company maybe, but they were one of the only ones that had set their science-based targets. But a young company like Mass Production, they had done LCAs on all their products, and they have learned a lot about that. So I really think that it's the younger companies that leading the way.
If we look at 2024, what do you have coming for yourself within sustainability, your big sustainability profile in the industry?
My exhibition that I did and also got the prize for is still going around. So I'm changing that, and so it will fit for new customers and on new venues. And otherwise I'm doing also new furniture with we're doing some new parts for the Tellus bench, and then I'm doing new furniture for other companies too.
We've actually featured this exhibition in our latest issue of the print magazine, but for those who don't know, what can you say about it? It was a year ago.
Yeah, it was a year ago, and the exhibition is called 1 kilo of CO2 emission, 1 kilo of greenhouse gases, and it's a material exhibition. So all the materials are shown in 1 kilo of emissions. What makes all the materials very different in size. So the leather piece is very small, and like the hemp and the rattan is huge.
All right, that was Emma Olbers, the Stockholm-based designer and sustainability expert. All right, moving on. You've also interviewed a software company. I love that. And I just love the fact that there are more innovations happening during the week. What is Variable?
Yeah, as you mentioned, it's a software company, and they are specialized in the design industry. And at the fair, they share the same booth as Norwegian furniture manufacturer or brand or company Minus, and they have worked together in I don't know, one project or several projects in order to look at the range and doing LCAs, and they're also very knowledgeable when it comes to DPPs, because it will also be included in design industry and not only in fashion. So we had quite a great conversation, me and Adam.
I love this, and you mentioned a very interesting point. We've been very occupied by the notion of digital product passport from a fashion perspective, and I guess it's because the European Commission have directly targeted textile industry, and people think of fashion immediately and will impact fashion quite a lot, but it's coming to the furniture industry for sure. I guess if people in the fashion industry are confused about this, it's even more so in the furniture industry, so we'll see about that. All right, let's hear it here now. Adam Scheuring, CEO of Variable.
We're standing at the exhibition of Minus and Variable, and I'm representing Variable, which is a software company that helps designers and manufacturers measure the carbon footprint of their products. So what our platform provides is a set of tools to understand the carbon footprint of a product across the entire life cycle of the product. We call this life cycle thinking, the idea to consider carbon emissions and carbon footprint of a product across the entire life cycle, to avoid greenwashing and to take ownership and responsibility for all the environmental impact that your product has over its lifetime.
How long have you been running, and over these years, how have you seen the conversation changed about what you offer?
We launched about 2 years ago, and we have seen a quite significant shift even in that relatively short time perspective. One of the things that we see is a lot more willingness to share data, a lot more interest from consumers and customers in general to communicate data and be transparent about data. Both when I'm talking about business to business, so like data about materials and manufacturing processes, but also about data towards consumers. This is why we introduced a digital product passport feature in our tool. So brands and designers can very easily share the data, communicate this data to their consumers. This is a first version focusing on the product carbon footprint of the products, but we see obviously this is a roadmap for us where we will add more information about the product's origin and indicators about the material and so on.
We stand here in the exhibition and we look at the digital product passport part of it. What's your view on how will we look at digital product passport? Because you're quite early. It's still 6 years to go before the EU will implement it, right?
Yeah, so the way we think about this is that we like this notion of the coalition of the willing. We want to work with the coalition of the willing. Those companies, those actors in every industry who are willing to go ahead of the regulations and just do things because they think it makes sense, or do things because this is a good way to communicate and tell stories. So this is what we are focusing on in our exhibition as well, to help Minus tell the story of their value chain with a digital product passport. And we think that probably early on this is going to be the main most important sort of story for consumer brands, is to tell stories with data. So we think that that's important, and going ahead of regulations is an opportunity. It's a business opportunity for those who want to lead the conversation. And of course, as the regulations are getting more precise and more sort of stringent, then of course they are going to focus more and more on the details. And perhaps this is going to be considered when, like a buyer at a big shopping center, for instance, putting things on a shelf, they're going to consider that in the purchasing process. So I'm talking about business to business, but probably also over time, consumers will be educated and looking for this information. So we're very excited about this development. This is the right thing to do, and we are very much welcoming anyone who wants to work with this already now, because we think that this is an opportunity for them.
You're also sharing your booth with Minus, the Norwegian brand. How do you work together?
Yeah, so we started discussing some of the details of the calculations, and we helped out some of those questions, clarifying those questions, and to understand help them understand the life cycle impacts of their products. So they are using our platform to basically document the carbon footprint of their products and to communicate it to their customers. And what we see is, obviously for us, Minus is a perfect example, because they are not only talking about a low low carbon product, they're talking about negative potential over the product's entire life cycle. So we think it's one of the best ways to illustrate it. We also work with Vestre, for instance, is another Norwegian brand. We're also really transparent and good in taking care of the environmental impact of their product and communicating it. So we are collaborating with those who are willing to showcase and want to showcase their numbers, and they take responsibility and they own what they have in their value chain.
Lastly, you touched upon it, but what are the keys in order for design brands to lower their emissions? And do you think they're good enough in talking about this and doing their part?
We think there's a lot of talk and there's increasingly more and more action, luckily. So we see that again, like as in the relatively short time frame, this has changed a lot. There's a lot more scrutiny into what's behind the numbers and what is exactly happening. So it's more and more difficult to greenwash and just get away with something shallow or superficial. So what is required, to the first part of your question, is go deep into the value chain. It's about material choices. It's about production processes. It's about cleaning up the entire value chain. So looking at it from everything from materials to the end of life. That's why we call this life cycle thinking, to take care of the whole life cycle. The biggest problem is biggest part of it is usually materials. So that's one of the big focus areas that we think that the industry has to focus on or work on going forward. So probably which is another huge opportunity for new companies or innovative companies who are coming up with new materials. So I think that watch out for materials in the coming years. I think there's going to be a big story.
All right, that was Adam Scheuring, the CEO of Variable. Moving on, we have another kind of household name in the Stockholm design scene, Jacob Wallér, owner and founder of Jordens Arkitekter. I find Jordens Arkitekter really fascinating. I've been following them for, 20 years, since my days at a Residence magazine. Really kind of innovative architects, and I feel like Jacob and his co-founder Johnny has really been skewing towards more sustainable practices the last few years. Johnny has opened up a farm of sorts outside of Stockholm, developing new technologies and farming and that kind of stuff. Love that. So what is Jacob talking about this year?
We published an interview with Johnny because at the fair, the firm Jordens ArkitekterSean, they've actually moved their office to the fair. So the architects at the firm is working from the booth ground.
Right. Well, that's a way to fill up the halls, I guess.
Yeah. But they're also having an extensive, really big exhibition highlighting the good solutions and the good examples, ranging all the way from material innovations to how to cut down trees in order for nature to thrive. And I wanted to follow up on our really inspiring article published online this week with another conversation with Jacob.
All right, let's hear it. Here's Jacob Wallér, owner and co-founder of Jordens ArkitekterSean.
We're at our exhibition called Farming Architects, and it's our space at Stockholm Furniture Fair. And we have actually moved our office to the fair instead of doing some exhibition about us. We actually invite you to us instead. So this is a look behind the scenes, so to speak. And we have 8 architects sitting here working on projects. And we're showing all our collaborations with different material suppliers or building system suppliers, and we're now sitting in our little pavilion. It turned out to be almost like a Japanese temple. It wasn't supposed to be, but it actually feels like it, and it's a bit more quiet in here, and we wanted to achieve a space where you can hide and get away from all the buzz outside and think for a while on the environment or on how to build a house or things like that. And we're actually in a hemp house now. So this house is built or made, the walls are made of hemp and lime, which is formed together with wooden frames to build a building system to build houses with. And we see this as a gesture to see the house soul without any surfaces or extra materials or plastic or anything that we think destroys the house. So this is the original before it's really ready. So this is an inspirational house.
And hemp is growing as a construction material.
It is actually growing, and hemp is a fantastic material. It binds 20 times the amount of CO2 to a normal tree. And imagine then comparing it with concrete that actually pollutes with CO2. So it's a fantastic material. And we use all of the hemp. We use the stem of the hemp, the fibers of the hemp. Others use the seed of the hemp to make oils and things like that. And it's grown in Sweden. It's produced in Sweden. We actually had a lot of hemp in Sweden a long time ago because all the ropes were made of hemp. And then it fell into some kind of... people forgot about hemp. And now it's starting to be a viable production of hemp in Sweden.
Why is it important for you to be here? It's a bit odd, I have to say, to see you here, but it's super inspiring. But why is it important?
We wanted to do an exhibition about the materials of the future. This is our way of saying we need to build houses this way. We cannot build houses the way that they have been built in the past years because we're polluting or destroying our planet. So this is I mean, we try to inspire people to think differently about materials and how you can assemble the house. And the whole exhibition is a show for collaborations, because building a house is a lot of collaborations. Technicians, architects, environmentalists. For example, we have a collaboration with Ekologigruppen that has a part of our exhibition here, and Osprey Farm, that is our test bed for our projects. So this is not just for us, it's a inspirational area for all our architects to come, or visitors, anyone, to come and see what you can do and what you maybe should do.
You mentioned some, and there are a bunch of super inspiring good examples here. Which one do you want to pinpoint?
We mentioned the hemp, and the hemp is actually used in a lot of different building systems. So, for example, we're sitting in, as I said, this hemp pavilion, but we also have collaborations with CLT walls and hemp insulation it's called, I think. And for example, also the eco cocoon walls. Have you seen the eco cocoon walls? They are made with straw. So the leftovers of seed is the straw. When you harvest the seed, you have the straw left, and the straw is also always left on the ground to rot and go into the ground again. We use that instead to make walls of. So different kind of systems. I don't want to put anyone at the top, but all the systems are new and innovative. But some are really old. I mean, we do log houses, massive log houses, and you've been doing that since people started building houses. So that's what we do now also.
You've simply brought nature into the Stockholm Furniture Fair.
And we hope so. And it's also a different smell here. When you go into our exhibition, I have seen people go to this wall and smell it. And I've seen at least 4 people hugging our log trees. You don't hug a concrete pillar, but you can hug a massive wooden pillar.
That was Jacob Wallér, owner and co-founder of Jordens ArkitekterSean. All right, interesting times, gang. I really like these guys. We've been keeping an eye on them for a few years now. We had them on the show when we hosted helped program the Stockholm Design and Architecture Talks a couple of years ago. Sean Barrett, Alexander Westerlund, experimenting with 3D furniture, new technologies, really kind of cutting edge stuff. What are they cooking up this year?
Yeah, they're the great example, the perfect example of the new and emerging designers and studios paving the way for how to make design relevant also like in the years to come when we need to transform and perform a transition in order for it to become more relevant. And they're constantly pushing their own boundaries and inviting other industry players in a special project called Nordic Innovation, which they will talk about more in our conversation, in order to work together to come up with new material solutions and innovations.
Good stuff. Here's Sean Barrett and Alexander Westerlund from Interesting Times Gang.
Welcome to our stand at Stockholm Design Week or Furniture Fair. We're Interesting Times Gang. We're showing off our products, furniture, concepts that are designed with either recycled or renewable biomaterials. We've got a few new products that we're showing today with oyster shells, sugar kelp. We've got some others that we've developed using orange peel waste and mycelium fibers.
You just won a big award in Germany.
Yeah.
What can you say about it?
Yeah, it's fantastic. I think the kelp chair has exceeded all of our expectations. It was originally designed for 2 Michelin chefs for their restaurant, Black Milk Gastro Bar, and it's taken on a life of its own. It's become synonymous with the future potential of new additive manufacturing, innovative production methods, and recycled materials like fishing nets.
And it won the German Design Award.
Exactly.
And now it's put into production as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So excellence in product design, which coming from Germany is quite a spectacular feat. I think we were the only Swedish design agency.
In that category, we were the only ones. And it was, as Sean is saying, to be in Germany and at the same time they had Dieter Ram's exhibition, and to be like in a mother like land for industrial design and take a prize was quite amazing. It was a really fun experience. And as Sean said, like at one point, like what you create takes a life of its own and you can't really control it anymore. And I guess that what happened to that specific kind of design and product.
You also talk about biophilic concepts. Yeah. Can you explain?
Well, certainly. So biophilic design is based on a theory that human beings have evolved in natural landscapes and environments. There's, for example, lots of research that shows that we see the most different shades of green. This is imprinted into our DNA. And so biophilic design is sort of a step away from what we've been doing for the last 50 or 100 years, where we've sort of tried to maximize the industrial process where everything around us has become rectilinear. With these new production methods and technologies, we can create things that are more reminiscent of nature, more organic. And the theory of biophilic design is that inherently in people we feel better with these kinds of forms, shapes and geometries, textures and colors around us. So it's a step away from I guess, clean minimalism and rather curated sort of organic shapes.
Yeah, and to fill in what Sean is saying, I think it's like an evolution from industrialism. Before industrialism, everyone like created, if you needed a stool and you were living in the country, you created a stool. Then industrialism came in, and the shapes that you could do in these machines were very like linear and rectilinear. And now technology has advanced so much, so it's easier to create these shapes in the 3D software. It's easier to manufacture them with the manufacturing methods we use. So I think we will see like a form of like revival for these shapes and forms, because like we saw just a couple of years ago when we started doing these shapes, people came to us, and one quite famous like in the media were like saying, but there's a lot of shapes in this room, and she didn't really know what to think of about everything. But now you can see, if you look around at the fair, more and more designers are using these manufacturing methods and production like software to get to these kind of results. So we're quite proud of, like, in one sense, being in the forefront of this evolution.
And you also described before a special product called Nordic Innovation.
Yeah.
What can you say about it?
Yeah, Sean can take that.
Yeah, so they're supporting us to work with two biomass, ocean biomass projects or materials that we're developing. The one is industrially grown sugar kelp. We're trying to find alternatives to forestry. Obviously, often wood and the forestry industry has a biomaterial that is often presented as a solution for most of the challenges. So we're building high-rise buildings in wood. We're going to replace the polymers in batteries with lignin, for example. And we believe that there's a space for example, blue materials that come from the ocean, and that we can sort of spread out these material development projects so that we can use things like invasive oyster shells, which we're working, and we've created a few really spectacular designs here. Alexander's designed a lamp, Inferno lamp, using invasive oyster shells from Pacific oysters, which somebody decided to bring to Scandinavia in the late 70s, and they've taken over our coastlines and the ocean ecosystems. So by trying to convert them into a more higher value material, we can create incentives to clear the coastlines. At the moment, it's being done on a municipality level or a communal level, and we need to create sort of an economy or an incentive to help provide sort of the potential for these materials to then sort of be harvested and be used. So by showing that they can create tables, lamps, etc. with them, we hopefully can be a catalyst or a lighthouse for these materials in the future.
All right, that was the guys from Interesting Times Gang, Johan Barrett and Alexander Westerlund. All right, Johan, some closing words. How would you summarize this week so far?
Yeah, I can speak for hours about this, but one key takeaway is that we focus so much about Nordic minimalism and wooden furniture instead of like Stefan Nilsson, our good friend and trend expert. He mentioned that because he's visiting trade fairs all across Europe, and the rest of Europe is talking colors.
Right.
And we're talking about wooden furniture in the same style as David Eriksson, the famous designer. He's like the inspiration source for so many brands. Yeah, so they pretty much look all the same. They pretty much work with business as usual. The bigger brands, I'm sure that they're developing their sustainability work, but it doesn't show. So the bigger brands, they really need to do even more in order to innovate and lower their emissions, and also to communicate it in a trustworthy way. You don't want any greenwashing, but you need the bigger players also to push the agenda forward for the industry in order to progress.
All right, bunch of stuff to come back to, obviously, bunch of ideas for upcoming articles and podcasts. This has been the Scandinavian Mind podcast. Just to reveal that we have an upcoming live talks series that we're doing together with our friends at Link & Co. It's going to be the Virtual Creativity Live series that continues on February 21st here in Stockholm. So do sign up to our newsletter. Visit scandinavianmind.com/newsletter not to miss out on that invite. And of course, we continue with our Beauty Innovation newsletter. Visit scandinavianmind.com/beautyinnovation to get your hands on that content. Until next week, goodbye.
Bye.